Welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short back from vacation. Good to be back in the studio and good to be back covering topics and talking about the Bible in relationship to cultural issues. Today we're going to continue to talk about this UFO so-called whistleblower who has set off, I would say, a firestorm in the media because the implications of what he says, what he claims, are definitely staggering. If you think about it, we see him here. Let me bring up his picture. His name is David Goresh, and he claims that he has seen documents and papers and photographs of actual alien craft and actually also alien bodies, pilots of these alien crafts. So he's actually making some huge, huge claims. And this has set off the media, and you have even mainstream media outlets talking about this. Because after all, if his claims are true, it definitely would change the entire perspective that we have now on our place in the universe, because right now I think the default assumption is that, as far as we know, we are the only ones alive that exist, any life in the entire universe. So we're the only ones, and that is the assumption that people have made for thousands and thousands of years. And there just is no evidence that there's anything else alive out in the universe. All that we know of, all that we see out there in the stars and the planets and the comets, asteroids and everything else, is that we are the only ones that are alive. But if this whistleblower, so-called whistleblower, is accurate in his description of reports that he's seen and photographs he's seen and talked to people, eyewitnesses who have seen these things, he's claiming that there are actually captured aircraft from outside of our planet, and also that there are occupants of these spacecraft that have been recovered. So he's making huge, huge claims. And on a previous video, I've talked to the fact that also what we have so far is just secondhand knowledge. He has not actually seen any of these things he's claiming. He has seen reports and talked to people that he believes have seen these things. So it's secondhand knowledge. It's hearsay. And we haven't actually had any kind of direct knowledge or evidence that these things exist. Only this man's word that he has talked to people who have seen them. He's seen supposedly pictures of them. He's seen reports filed by people that have supposedly seen them. So it's all secondhand knowledge. So the latest is that he goes before Congress after this News Nation interview that sort of set everything off. And he goes before Congress, and you would think, okay, great, he's going to actually be in a position to tell more. And what actually happens is that he tells less. They aren't able to even hardly drag out the information that he gave in this interview. The congressmen and women question him, and he's even more circumspect. He's even more guarded in his language. He won't even produce anything additional that he says from this interview that he gave previously. And now he's even narrowing his claims. So he's even shoring up those claims. So it was a big disappointment before Congress because, one, the congressmen and women did not ask the really probing questions and didn't press him on any of his evasive answers. And second, he seems to now not want to talk as much as he did with the interview. Now, you might say, well, because he's under oath right now, and it could come back legally to hurt him in the form of fines and even jail time if he is lying. But if he's telling the truth, what does he have to fear and what does he have to worry about? And so if he's going to be a whistleblower, you would assume that he's going to start blowing some whistles, and he's going to start sharing more and more and more as he's getting more attention and he's getting more credible attention. You're standing before Congress answering questions. That's a pretty high authority, and you would think that you would be more outspoken in what you say you claim. But no, he's being more guarded and being more careful in what he says. And it's really hard to listen to someone like this because he's being so careful that he doesn't want to say anything that could get him into trouble. Now, the congressional inquiry that he went before, he was with two men, and these were pilots and people that work with the military, and they, in fact, did share what they saw, and they were not at all like he was, this David Grush, the whistleblower. But let's think about this situation that David Grush has brought upon the public here lately. He is claiming that he has seen and has had access to evidence that there are aliens and that they are here on the Earth and that some of their spacecraft have been captured. That's what he's claiming. And what would be the implication of actually that being true? Well, for Christians, some people ask, well, what does it mean for Christians if there are actually aliens out there? What would it mean if there were other civilizations out there? Would that change our faith at all? Would that hurt or hinder or help our faith, knowing that there were others outside of the planet Earth? Would that be something that would affect doubt in the faith, or would it actually strengthen our faith? Well, it would not hurt the core beliefs of Christianity if there were other civilizations. But what it would do would be to indicate to us that God has not revealed everything in the Bible, and that he obviously has not revealed that there are planets and that there are civilizations out there in the sky beyond our surface. He has not told us anything about that. He's talked about angels. He's talked about demons. He has told us, for example, in the scenes in the book of Revelation, that there are creatures surrounding the throne of God. And he's indicated that there are some other creatures out there. But as far as other civilizations off of our surface of our earth, this is totally silent in the Bible, which in and of itself does not present a problem, because we also assume that there are all kinds of things that God has not revealed to us. It's not necessary, evidently, for him to talk about things that he has not revealed. And so in his wisdom, in his infinite wisdom, I might add, he has not revealed everything that he could reveal to us. So it is possible that there could be civilizations out there in the stars, in the universe, many civilizations that we just don't know about and God has not revealed to us. But yet it is a little strange that he would talk about angels, he would talk about demons, he would talk about other aspects of reality that we don't have access to, direct knowledge to, but yet he would skip telling us that, hey, there are other people, there are other creatures, there are other civilizations beyond the stars, and give us a heads up. But that is not the case. He has not talked about that. And so it implies, the Bible, for example, implies, it doesn't say that we are the only ones in our universe. It doesn't talk about the universe as such, but it doesn't say that there are other creatures or beings or people or civilizations outside of the surface of the earth. So it implies in the silence that there aren't. Does it say that there are not? No, but it does imply that they are not. Another problem with other civilizations like aliens is that it might cause problems for the Jesus dying for us once for all. He died for the sins of human beings once for all. It talks about in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament as a once for all sacrifice. Well, if there are other civilizations outside of our planet, they are either fallen or they are not fallen. Now, if they're not fallen, then Christ obviously did not need to die for the sins of the world in that world, and that there would be no atonement needed. But we would probably assume, and assume correctly, that if there are other civilizations, there would be some that were fallen. How many there are out there, how many civilizations, how many planets, how many inhabited planets, we don't have any idea that there are any planets that are inhabited by human living beings. But if there were, there would be some that would be fallen, we would assume, just like our planet is a fallen planet, and that Christ would need to die for their sins, and that he would care about them and want to die for their sins, for the ones who trust in him. So then that would necessitate Jesus dying on the cross many, many different times for many different civilizations. That might imply that the once for all sacrifice means just once for all on the planet Earth, which would, again, change a little bit of the theological emphasis. And it would, at a minimum, it would say that we aren't as special as we thought we were, or we're not as special as the Bible tells us we are. Now, what I mean by that is, if we are the only people, and God's affection is for us and us alone, and there are no other objects of his affection out there in the universe, then that makes this planet very special, and it makes the people on this planet very, very special. And that by dying on the cross, he was doing something for a race of beings, humans, who are very special to him, and they're so special that he would die for them on the cross. But if there are countless numbers of civilizations where God has had to send Jesus to die on the cross for them also as atonement for their sins, then the unique once-for-all atonement that Christ did here on planet Earth would not have necessarily been as special as we were thinking, and God's love for us as human beings is not as special as if we were the only ones. So we still would have the gospel, we would still have the promises, we would still have the atonement that Christ died for our sins, we would still have the knowledge that God loves us, but we would have to step back a little bit and say, well, yeah, but he also loves those other countless civilizations out there in the stars. So it would make, at a minimum, it would mean that we would have to adjust our perspective on things. Now, that would not be critical for Christianity. It would not mean the end of Christianity, but it would demand that we adjust our perspective on things and input this new information that we're receiving if it's true. So there are some definite important implications that would flow if this whistleblower is actually telling us the truth. But like I said in another video, I do not believe that these reports are accurate. And I believe that, in fact, what's taking place is what some other Christians are talking about, like Hugh Ross and other theologians and thinkers and intellectuals in the evangelical world, and that is that what's taking place is a massive deception campaign by demonic powers. Now, to the secular world, that seems very strange indeed to be talking about demonic powers and demon deception and all kinds of other things like that. To the secular world, What this David Koresh is talking about seems totally plausible. And the reason being is that for the last, I would say, half a century at least, going back even further after World War II, the idea that there are space aliens, the idea that we are being visited by aliens, and that there are aliens that exist out there in the universe, this has been growing and growing and growing, and it's been feeding into this whole public understanding of what an alien looks like and what spacecraft look like from outer space. And there's this whole cultural phenomenon, the UFO phenomenon. And so through the movies, E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Independence Day, you can just go on and on. Every year there's a new movie brought out by Hollywood that talks about UFOs, alien encounters, and so forth. So our culture has been steeped in this mythology of UFOs. Alien abductions, there are all kinds of books on the subject. There's a huge, big community, the UFO community, that has tried and true believers. I'm not talking about Christian believers. I'm talking about believers in UFOs. The History Channel, for example, has gone full UFO with their ancient astronaut theories and ancient alien theories, and a whole series. I think it's now in its 15th season, just a massive amount of interest. You have all kinds of conspiracy theories about aliens and hangars in Nevada and New Mexico where alien aircraft are stored, and experiments on aliens. And this David Koresh, the whistleblower, has actually said in the interview that started this whole thing, he's actually made the claim that there is being reverse engineering taking place, and that the U.S. government has benefited from the technology that it's learned from these alien aircrafts, and so on and so forth. The whole thing. Now, people are primed and ready to believe that because that's what they've been fed through the movies, through books, through television shows. Think of Star Trek, so popular that people actually know the ins and outs of the whole Star Trek universe, the whole, you might say, theology of Star Trek. And then there's Star Wars. And then there's all these other, Guardian of the Galaxies. Aliens and UFOs and civilizations outside our planet is such a part of our public culture. And that when you have a whistleblower, supposedly, like this David Koresh, he is going to get a very sympathetic audience, because most people nowadays in our secular world, they believe in aliens. Even without evidence, they believe in aliens. And what they claim is evidence is the kind of grainy film video, little pictures taken from, Navy and Air Force pilots. And you have all kinds of UFO so-called specialists and journalists who are on these stories all over the place. And so when someone like this gets in front of Congress, then you begin to say, hey, people who are already predisposed to believe all this are now getting fed the kind of red meat that they really want to consume. And so people are having a field day, just running wild with their imaginations. But what we have to do is ground ourselves in the truth. And the truth is, we don't have this whistleblower, any of his evidence. And when he went to Congress, he did not present anything new, and he didn't present any new leads for believing in his claims. So we're still with the hearsay, and he said this, and I saw some documents that reported this, and I saw some pictures of this, but no first-hand, tangible, hard evidence. And other than, if you want to count these, the so-called Navy and Air Force pilots, their video, again, from a huge distance away, tracking objects in the sky that do things that we don't or can't comprehend how they can do these things, making right angles at high speeds and so forth. Now, these are interesting things, and there definitely is something going on out there. But again, it's not what these people are claiming that it might be. That is aliens from outside. We have a framework for understanding this as Christians, and the framework is that these are demonic deceptions. This kind of activity has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, only now it's being done under the guise of aliens. But this is actually just part of the occult. This is part of the seances and the fortune telling and the mediumship. Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was the big craze of the seances. And you would go into these parlors and gather around the table, and there would be a medium who would claim to contact someone from the dead. And this was the big rage. In fact, for that time, this was the big UFO rage. For our time, it's the aliens visiting us from outside our planet. This is the new occult rage. And the same pattern of evidence is presented. You have these grainy film photos. You have secondhand hearsay. You have experiential claims of people. You have people actually dealing with something. I mean, I think we can safely claim that these occult experiences that were all the rage in the late 1800s in Victorian England, for example, and in the United States, in New York, these kinds of occult manifestations, with so many people testifying to experiencing something, you can't dismiss them. They are actual experiences of some kind of spiritual manifestation. And as Christians, the framework we have, the best theory is that they are demonic, because we know the demons are real. They're fallen angels. They started out good, according to the Bible, and then at some point, Lucifer led, say, a third of them to rebel against God, and they have been rebelling against God ever since, and they have been coming as enemies of the human race, tempting us, trying to get us to do evil and deceiving and fooling us into believing lies. And they are still doing that. They were doing it back in Victorian England, in upstate New York, during the late 1800s, with the whole seance, occultism, mind reading, that kind of thing, ESP. All of these kinds of areas fit into the same pattern or general pattern of evidence as the UFO craze today. Only the UFO craze today, now we have a lot more communication means like the internet, cable news, radio. We have more publications out. And another factor that the UFO craze has today that the old occult seance craze did not have is that the whole Western world is primed and ready to believe anything about UFOs today, because most people believe that life evolved rather than was created. So if you believe the assumption that life evolved on the planet Earth naturally, in other words, you just have chemicals, and over time, these chemicals can bump into each other and mix together in a certain proportion and create some kind of basic human life, not human life, but basic biological life. And then evolution kicks in and survival of the fittest, and you get more development of life. eventually culminating in the human life. If you believe that life can happen through that natural accidental practice, then you believe also that it could happen out there in outer space with the billions of stars out there and billions of planets, and you believe the same process could have happened many, many different times on many different planets all over the universe. So it falls into the same basic understanding of, if you buy into evolution, macro evolution, that is from chemistry to humans, then you're going to be open to the idea of aliens, because that would flow naturally from the theory of evolution. So you have all these forces coalescing in our society today, and we are gullible in believing these alien reports like what this whistleblower is saying. The thing is, as Christians, we have to demand hard evidence for these claims because we don't want to be deceived. So what these theologians in the Christian evangelical world are claiming, and I believe that this is accurate, that demons are deceiving people, playing with their emotions, getting into their heads, you might want to say, putting worries and anxiety and fears in the hearts of people today, that there might be some civilization that will come to the planet Earth and try to conquer it, or that there are unknown aliens here right now secretly studying us, or that there are advanced civilizations out there that may come and find us as a less advanced civilization and take over. I mean, there are so many nightmare scenarios that one could come up with. And I think of the movies and Hollywood television have all basically been exploring these different scenarios. But if, in fact, this is a demonic deception, then you would get the exact kind of evidence that we're seeing now. You would get certain people being deceived, and then they're deceiving other people. So this David Koresh, who knows what he's seen, because he won't actually explain any concrete details. He claims it's all classified, and he doesn't want to get into trouble. So he's a whistleblower, but he's unwilling to blow the whistle. He's just willing to say, I have a whistle, but I can't really talk about anything in detail, and I can't blow the whistle because I'll get in trouble. Well, he's playing us along, and I don't blame him necessarily, because he's being played. And under this demonic deception theory that I find totally credible, David Koresh and a lot of these people who have seen things have actually seen things, but they're not what they think they've seen. So David Koresh might have heard reports from people who were deceived, and he then spreads these reports, and other people are deceived. So it's a big, massive deception campaign, misinformation, disinformation by demons, spiritual entities, fallen angels. So don't get afraid, don't get worried. Demand hard evidence, and I think that's the best position, the safest position as Christians we can have. Well, God bless. We'll see you back next week.